Miss Bonnie was a feeling teacher, county schools elementary. The kids could be unruly, but she did her best each week.
This is a message from the rebellion.
She had an exercise to occupy her plans. Got a job, would you like to have, and why if
Circus
I may
peanuts now
ask?
contain C4 explosives.
Well, there were astronauts
Do
and some
this
nurses, so she
information
taught
with what
the
you will.
college degrees. A teacher and some preachers and a
Magic
internet
glasses cause
celebrity.
cancer.
One peculiar answer, hold on, she almost said. She had to let it pass for now, but it echoed in her head. He said, I think I might grow up to be a liar. A poor man with nothing more than stories to sell. I think I might grow up and build a cabin in the mountains and be old alone and bitter as hell. That's what she thought about the feelings of the boys. Didn't wanna have some sort of talk in front of everyone. Did she understand him that she heard what he said? Repeating politics from the older kids. He said, I think I might grow up to be a liar. A poor man with nothing more than stories to sell. I think I might grow up and build a cabin in the mountains and be old alone and bitter as hell. So she waited till after class, smiled and said,
Yeah, me and Moose should still have a good time, even in the absence of the Clifford. But no, I plan on doing at least a couple of songwriters around this year. Me and Paps have a pretty good relationship as well. One to like I've been a part of songwriters rounds, but I've never been completely in charge of them. Like I did one at Wallace that was hosted by Casey Williams, and then I got invited to one in Dunn, North Carolina. But that is a listening room where it's very structured, and I'm a guest. You know, even on the event that night, I still had no part in setting it up. So Paps is a little bit more loosey goosey with as far as what comes and goes. You know, it's a real easy going place. So I really wanted to pilot a storytelling songwriter round of my own. I feel like what is missing in a lot of the song, and this is no judgment towards the songwriter rounds that I've been a part of. Oh, Pigeon Forge, the listening room over there. Pigeon Forge was the other one I did. 90 minutes isn't long enough. First of all, in my opinion, because all the story, when you got three storytellers, and the 90 minutes is a long time for people to, because they all feel like they're either stepping on each other's toes or they're rushing through the material. And my other problem with traditional storyteller around is they're very sterile, in my opinion. Like they're very explicit at the commercial ones, like the listening rooms, that you can't use profanity, and they want you to keep things PG. Like there's no racy stories. And I'm not suggesting that I think every single songwriter round should just be full of vulgarities. But I think if you would let the reins off the songwriters just a little bit more, I think it would be a much better experience. And I think Moose will do a good job of that. You know what I'm saying? Because he's a big character. I think, you know, I think it fit the agenda of the whole songwriter realm perfectly. Is what I mean. What's up, Alvin? Have you been talking to yourself this whole time? I can hear you. I'm loud and clear. So, well, at least I've been talking for a long time, so they got to hear me.
All right. Since you're the only one here, Alvin, I am going to start the show over. So, sorry about that. And we'll kick back into it because I did most of the talking that time. So hang out, everybody. Hope y'all come back in, and I'll delete this one and restart the show.
Just in case just in case Alvin can't hear you right there, Cliff's about to restart the show because, now Alvin says he can hear you.
Yeah, he can hear me. My mixing board wasn't turned on. All right.
Did you do so much that you need to restart it?
Do what?
Have we talked so much that you need to restart it? It's 10:20.
Well, yeah, I think so, because I probably talked for about, I don't know, 3
Can you
minutes.
snip it after the fact?
No, we can pimp it out. But I'm just afraid people on the replay would turn it off if they couldn't hear me.
You think you could snip it like in post?
Yeah, I'd say I can. So we'll just do that, and I'll snip it a little bit.
Up to, now.
Yeah, so, hello, folks, and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. Sorry to keep you waiting, folks. Complicated business. That's right. Yeah, dude, it's been a long day. Had a lot of work to do today, which is a good thing as a new small business owner. I'm so glad to be able to have done that. That was Tim bringing us in with the intro there. His song Bitter as Hell. Tim's going to be playing up in Saltville, Virginia with Moose. And I was saying how I had let Tim down by telling him that I would be able to go perform a few songs at that show. And it turned out my daughter's 12th birthday party is that day. It's not her actual birthday, but that's the day we're having her party, and it didn't click with me that those were the same days. So I was thanking Tim for being gracious enough to invite me and hoping that he would do so again. And then you heard what Tim said. So
Another round. We'll abbreviate it this time, so you'll have to hear it again. We'll do another round.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's the abbreviated version there. So yeah, so here we are, loud and clear. Alvin can hear us, and it's great to have you in the chat tonight, Alvin. I got your emails, and that is a lot of good material that we can definitely use in our solutions show. As we've talked about, there is a whole world out there against us as far as, a global technocracy being put in place, but there are things that we can do to make ourselves independent of it, and some of the ways that we can actually use those tools against the powers that be that are trying to use them against us. So if we have time tonight, I may look into a little bit of that. I sent some interesting stuff as far as some free AI tools that you can use to make yourself more productive. And I was following an account on Twitter. I think it got deleted. I haven't seen it lately, but this guy he said he was going to use an AI, Chat GPT, and he was going to start a business, and he was going to do everything ChatGPT told him to do. He was going to give it $100 to spend, and he would invest it however the AI told him that he should do it. And long story short, by the end of the second day, ChatGPT had collected him $7,200 in startup money. He hadn't made a product yet. He'd designed it and set up his marketing and started collecting investments for it. And there were other people starting to use these tools too to set up businesses. So I haven't seen that account. I don't know if it got nuked or if it's just not been in my feed, but I was following it to see what would happen there. But there's a lot of other tools that folks can use, and let's see if I can find this here. Here we go. Rowan Chung. We'll go ahead and look at it real quick. I'll link this in the description so you can check this out. This is a tweet. He says ChatGPT represents only a fraction of the top AI tools. I search through over 100 plus new AI tools each week, so you don't have to. Here's the week's 10 most useful ones you've never heard about. And he talks about Luma AI that is can make your art 3D, and you can make realistic augmented reality photos and stuff like that. Pretty cool. Free app there. And so you can use that for design and marketing and stuff like that. But then you go on down, and there's a whole of them up here where you can, basically the AI asks you questions, and then you tell it the answers, and then it makes you a resume. All kinds of helpful tools there that you can use to navigate the deep waters of the international technocracy. I'll go ahead and stick that in the description so y'all can check that out. It's been in the news so much lately about the advancements of AI and the way people are using stuff like ChatGPT to cheat college exams. Even write theses. Is it theses or theses? Theses sounds an awful lot like feces, which is no coincidence.
I'm not suggesting that there's much value in a thesis.
You're let's see, Tim. You're kind of quiet there. Let's see if that's.
I can talk louder.
There we go, baby. Yeah, nip it in the bud when you post. That's what we'll do, Alvin. You got way more, and if you want a custom presentation, we could do that too. Man, that would be amazing. Like I said, we'll talk about that in email, Alvin. What we discuss further. Don't want to put you on the spot or anything. Don't want to give anybody else too much information. But if you're here with us tonight, go ahead and hit like on the video. Go over to Rumble. The link is in the description. Follow us there at the Iron Mountain Hour. Check out some of the videos over there. Hit the like button or the Rumble button on those to, kind of get us boosted in that algorithm. We're trying to pick up our followers there. We've been steadily picking up here on YouTube. There for a while we were losing. I think people were tuning in to see more of the Feral People type comment or content. And that's not our regular bread and butter. I mean, we do that. It's a lot of fun to do sometimes, but more often we talk geopolitical and scientific conspiracies and things like that. So every now and then we do get into the cryptids and the paranormal, and I love that stuff. It's just not the not the meat and potatoes of the channel. So a lot of the people that were tuning in to see more of that content, I think, were dropping off. Huh?
I'd love it if we could do a whole episode on meat and potatoes.
Yeah, you're all about those potatoes.
I really am. Potatoes make me happy, happy.
Yeah, y'all think he's just joking around, but this man really is all about his potatoes. Are you Irish, Tim?
Potatoes and good pie.
Are you Irish?
Like 20%, 19%, something like that. I don't know.
Nave sounds like an English name.
What is it?
I said your last name sounds like an English name.
Nave is, I think it comes from Scots Irish, and it refers to the backbone of the way they used to build churches.
Mm.
The scoundrel version of Nave is spelled with a K.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would take scoundrel just as much as I would take backbone of a church. But my actual family name is supposed to be Howell, because my granddad was adopted. Even though I do have Naves in my family, there's a good chance I would have been Nave anyway. My name would have been Howell on my granddad's side, and I always thought that was funny because Thurston Howell III from Gilligan's Island had so much money. We didn't have any money. My granddad lived in a single wide out in Siam, But he took the name of his foster parents, Nave.
Alvin, we'll have to be Tater Bros. Yes. So yeah, Tim is definitely serious about the potatoes. He's not just joking about that.
I am.
So in the video tonight, I didn't really have much of a show to put together. Like I said, I had a pretty long day, so I just figured we'd just pull up some news and talk about it. But I did have a few things that I did want to look at. And if you're new to the area of Northeast Tennessee, or you're thinking about visiting, you might be interested in the Little Winters of Northeast Tennessee here in spring. You ever heard of the dogwood winter, blackberry winter, whippoorwill winter, redbud winter?
Yes.
Yeah. So usually it's after it already starts warming up, and then you get a freeze again, and it usually does coincide with when the dogwoods bloom, when the redbuds bloom, when the blackberries bloom, when you start hearing the whippoorwills doing their call, that it's whippoorwill winter, and it usually does tend to get cool around then. It's pretty cool because those things that are based on the natural cycles are really a far better predictor of what the weather may be than the weatherman. I was talking to my business partner. He and I were joking. A lot of our business in exterminating depends on the weather, and so while we're trying to figure out when to schedule certain stuff, what the weather's doing, we'll often joke about how we got in the wrong business. We should have been weathermen because they change the forecast, every few hours, and all you have to do is be 50% right. At least if you're right at least half the time, then they can't really say anything. So, hey man, should have gone to meteorology school. But they have gotten a lot better at it over the years, but it's still pretty crazy in Tennessee in particular, just because of our kind of up here in the corner, you've got this ridges of mountains coming over from the Cumberland Plateau and then running into the Appalachian Mountains. So that does make for some crazy weather. And you know, a lot of times people will use the saying, you know, in lots of different places. But if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes or whatever. You know, you can say that about Tennessee, and other people say if you don't like the weather, go back where you came from. Kindly, but no, it's like Alvin said, climate is what you expect, weather is what you get. Yeah, there you go. But that's a good. That's like I said, the climate and the change of the climate. Your wife's from Mountain City, okay. Well, then you know about that crazy weather, man. It's wild up there. It's right at the convergence of those two mountain ranges. Like the Iron Mountain comes down from Damascus, Virginia. That's where I'm at right now, and Tim's across the valley from me. But I'm on the Iron Mountain, and we're running into, you know, the greater Appalachian stream that goes, you know, kind of southwest to northeast up the East Coast, or up, you know, inland from the East Coast. And
Tim's on the Iron Mountain. I'm on the island of unwanted toys.
Yeah, well, the Valley Forge area down was what we have between us, the Valley Forge. You know, and of course there actually was a forge down there in the valley, and Powder Mill Road, there was a powder mill. And we've gone over some of those famous stories of our area in previous episodes, and I'm sure we'll go over them again. But
my neighborhood that I raised, the neighborhood I grew up in, Pinnacle Drive, was the very top of Prophet Subdivision. They only named it that because it was the very top road of the old iron ore industry up there. We didn't know as kids we'd find these big chunks of quartz and pieces of iron and stuff. They never told us that all of our backyards were collapsed mines and it was dangerous as hell back there.
Yeah, and you can go up even in the deep woods, man. Like you can climb up in the deep woods and find a stream that, you know, doesn't cross a road, that you follow this stream for an hour or two, and then you come upon a rock that has been, you know, cored, and it's been sampled and taken cores out of it. They're trying to get the iron content. They're like out in the middle of nowhere. And how long ago was this? They were mining iron and lead out of these hills, you know, almost as soon as they got here, people started finding it, which is just crazy, because how often have you seen iron or lead ore, you know, if you're in this area? I mean, you have to know what to look for, and you have to know where to look, and those people did, and they found it quick.
My backyard was full of it, but I didn't think it was special. But I mean, it really wasn't. It was just big chunks of crazy-looking rock. But
that might have been slag too, though.
Yeah, it wasn't usable. I mean, I guess it would have been if you had a mine to, you know, bust it up and get the stuff out of it. But the coolest thing was finding the pieces of quartz. You'd find them all over the place with the red clay there.
Yeah, we got some awesome quartz around here.
A whole lot later on down the road that the quartz is necessary for mining, because the quartz is what traps most of the minerals that they're looking for. Yeah.
I'm going to read you about the 6 little winters of Tennessee here from Visit Cleveland. Visit Cleveland, Tennessee's. It's what, halfway from Knoxville to Nashville. So there's a little different, but they still have the same. They still have the same little winters. And the first of the cold snaps or little winters are locust winter and red bud winter, not red butt winter. These occur. Winter. Yeah, red butt.
Just extra cold, makes your ass cold red.
Yeah. Yeah, if you get out there working, you know, if you're a well digger, plumber, you get that red butt going on. And then but when it first starts getting warm, and it tricks the red buds into blooming, and then next thing you know, cool, damp, and windy weather, and it seems like it's out of nowhere unless you're used to it, like a lot of us are. And then there's dogwood winter, and that usually happens around the middle of April. We've already had our dogwood winter this year. Our dogwood's already bloomed, so it got cold at night a little bit last week, and you know that's where we're at there. So we may have an early blackberry winter, which usually happens early to mid-May, and that's when, you know, the blackberries start budding, and that's part of their life cycles. They have their cold snap triggers them to basically start their budding process, and they know that it's after they've had so much warm weather, and then that cold snap happens, which is just amazing if you really think about that, how these, you know, how these plant species, and there's way many more examples that are more astonishing, how they've evolved or been created or whatever you want to say, or maybe both, to read the weather and know what's going on. And there was a guy I used to listen to. I used to listen to our local state representative. He's actually the state representative for Mountain City, Scotty Campbell, and he was on the local talk radio show, Super Talk 92.9, and he had been in the state house before, but when he ran again, he had to stop hosting the show because it would have been, he'd have been basically being compensated to campaign for himself by corporate entity, which would be against the law. So he's not allowed to have the show while he's campaigning. So anyway, he on the show had a regular caller who would call in about his snow bush, and this guy lived in Roan Mountain, and his family had a bush in there, and that they had passed down for generations, and they taught the children to read this snow bush, and he could predict the amount of snowfalls that you would have that year, and he could predict how severe they would be. And 2 years that I listened to this guy, he was exactly right on the amount of snowfall both times. So, I mean the number of snow events, basically. Then where it was like if you had more than an inch of snow, and like he didn't tell. He just said it was the snow bush. But he would call in regularly and give an update on the snow bush, and he was pretty accurate. So. If you think about it though, and you think about things like blackberry winter and dogwood winter and all these different redbud winter and locust winter, and you look at these plants know something, right? They've got a growth cycle that depends on it getting warm and cold, and certain triggers cause these things to bud or bloom or whatever it is, and so when you see that, you can tell that trigger's been reached and you're on to the next stage in that plant's or that tree's growth process for the year. And unfortunately, I'm afraid my peach tree is not going to make it again this year. I've not had peaches in like 5 years. No, it's not been that long, but it's been longer than I would like, because you've seen my peach tree. It's not that big. It's like, I don't know, 12 feet tall and probably 15 feet in diameter. But
I don't know if you've ever seen the old peach tree.
Oh yeah, you always come over at night, so you probably haven't even noticed it. But it's the closest tree to my driveway, and it's I'd say 12 feet tall and 15 feet in diameter. And the last time we got peaches from it, we got like 250 pounds. I had so many peaches I couldn't give them away. I couldn't eat any more peach cobbler or peach pie or just peach. I love the flavor of a good peach just dripping, ripe, juicy peach. But, the time that they're ripe and the time that they go bad is pretty short. And, so I guess I need to start canning them. Cleveland is 20 miles north of Chattanooga, just south of Athens. There you go, Alvin. Thank you. His old territory. Where the Blue Ridge wanes and the Smokies begin. That's right. Yes. Thank you. You said it better than I did.
It's also where Scott Stapp went to Lee University and got kicked out for pot possession.
Is that the singer from Creed?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think people give that guy a little too hard of a time. Creed in general, I think they get too hard of a time.
Yeah, just because they're Christians, the machine decided to go after them. And the edgy kids wanted to go after them because they were Christians, so it kind of became a thing.
They wanted to make Creed out there like the same thing as Nickelback. It's like,
I just didn't care for their music, but it was definitely not anything like Nickelback, where you hear a song like Photograph and Rock Stars, and it's like, those are definitely songs that people relate to, but they're like mass common denominator songs. And
I don't even hate on Nickelback for
I don't either.
To be hit machines or whatever. It's whatever. You got to understand what your market is. But I think Creed got sucked up in that same sort of hater verse that people wanted to suck Nickelback up into, but I think they got put in there incorrectly. And I think it's hilarious that Scott Stapp is going around doing concerts right now. Well, and I think it's hilarious that the one in Bristol went really well, apparently. And I heard a video of it, and it actually sounded pretty good, considering it. I mean, it was Creed, but I thought they were on key and all that. I don't know who was playing guitar for him, but it wasn't Mark Tremonti.
Tremonti's a beast. I don't. like I said, I never was into Creed, and I never, and I did actually like Nickelback, but I'll tell you something about it. You know, people can hate on all us music snobs and musicians and edgy, you know, art enjoyer types. You know, we can thumb our nose at Nickelback and stuff, but the fact of the matter is, like, I'm not going to sit down and listen to Nickelback, but if you're in public and Nickelback comes on, you'll see, you know, people of any race and ethnicity or, you know, social group or whatever. We all just want to be big rock stars, you know, singing along to that song and Photograph, and they love it, you know. So whatever, man. That music makes a lot of people happy, even if it's not for us. Do what?
Are you saying that Nickelback could unite the races?
I'm saying I have seen people of all race jam the hell out to the song Rockstar and Photograph by Nickelback.
Couldn't you make the same argument about Snoop?
Well, yeah.
Maybe the missing equation to end racism forever is a Nickelback and Snoop Dogg hybrid song collaboration.
You could be right. You know, I was...
that collaboration, racism would be gone overnight.
I did an interview for a podcast last night. A fellow named Jordan Moore. He does a podcast. He's getting it started. He's recording his first round of interviews called "What Made That Song," and he asked about the Pillbillies song. What the hell's the name of the song? "Country Boys in the City." And the whole point of that song was, I went into a long-winded explanation on the show because it was nice to talk about myself. I usually don't do that a whole lot, so I actually kind of enjoyed that, and it was fun to have somebody ask me about my songs and, you know, actually want to hear me talk about it. So, and me not feel like I was shamelessly self-plugging or something like that. So anyway, I had a lot of fun doing that, and I wish Jordan a lot of success with his show. I think it's going to be a good one. He's talking to a lot of local artists and asking them what made that song. But the song "Country Boys in the City," I wrote with a couple of buddies of mine in the band Hanging Judges. I wrote most of the music and the words, but they did help with like some of the jokes, and it was set up kind of as a comedy song, but it also was based on a true story. In this song, "Country Boys in the City," there's like a confrontation between some country boys who go into the city and run into some black guys who are hanging out, and, you know, they turn out, you know, after they hang out together and smoke a blunt and drink a little moonshine, that they actually have a lot more in common than anybody around them would have led them to believe. And that actually comes from a true story about the older brother of one of my best friends growing up. We'll call him Geraldo. But Geraldo, he had a extremely troubled lifestyle and was raised around like white supremacist gang. His father was a white supremacist like gang member and like a drug trafficker, and he grew up in such an environment that Geraldo thought that it was just normal for, in a traffic altercation, you kept a gun in the glove box in case somebody cut you off. That way you could pull it out and swing it around or shoot a couple rounds in the air. And he also kept you a bottle of liquor in the glove box if you were a man, because when a man gets into the car, he takes him a drink of liquor and starts the car, and then when he gets where he's going, he gets him a drink of liquor before he stops. So, like I said, this man he was raised up into his early teenage years by his father, who was in this environment, and he ends up, like I said, he was my friend's older half brother, and after high school, me and my friend kind of drifted apart. I kind of, you know, partied a lot more, and he kind of went into, you know, more straight-laced kind of stuff, and it's paid off for him. He's very successful now. But Geraldo, you know, kind of came around, and it actually kind of corrupted me a little bit at that age. But at the time, I was hanging out with some guys who, a roommate of mine and some of his friends, and they were black guys from New York and D.C., and Geraldo comes around, and he'd never smoked a blunt before, and he'd never seen like high grade hydroponic weed like this was like 2020, or not 2020, sorry, 2001, maybe 2000, somewhere in there. And he's sitting around, and he'd brought some moonshine, and we were smoking blunts, and he just blurts out, "Man, you N-words sure know how to party." And I saw my roommate and his friends kind of look at each other like, did he just say, did he really just say that? And they didn't say anything right away. And then a few minutes later, like I was like, maybe they just go let it go. But a few minutes later, Geraldo says it again in a similar context. And they're like, hey, what the fuck, man? Like, you can't say that. And as it turns out, Geraldo, where he was raised, it was never even for him that he had any experiences with anybody of another race or had any, even any preconceptions of hates. That's just what he had heard them called, so that's what he called them. And luckily they were gracious enough to say, look, man, I think you're cool, but you can't be talking like that. Like, most places you're going to get your ass whooped talking like that. And, you know, they were, like I said, they were able to recognize that he really didn't mean it maliciously. And so anyway, that's what that song was actually about, because after that kind of tense moment there was, once they started, you know, hanging out together and actually talking about family and, you know, all this kind of stuff, everyday life, they realized they actually had a lot in common. So that's what we ended up talking about on that show there. But yeah, music is the great equalizer. That's right, Alvin. And something like Nickelback and Snoop Dogg compilation, you know, it might just heal the planet. Who knows?
Oh, hell. The Snoopleback. Nickel Snoop.
But yeah, anyway, I'm not sure exactly when Jordan's going to launch that podcast. He wants to have a, you know, good amount of material recorded before he continues it. So, like I said, it sounds like it'll be a lot of fun to listen to other artists' stories. So keep your eye out for what made that song by Jordan. Hey, it's all right, Spill. We were a little bit late starting, so we're just kind of shooting the shit right now. Glad to have you with us there, Spill. I kind of forgot it was Wednesday all day too. I had a long day at work. I started early and I finished up about 7:30. But as I said earlier, now I can't remember if I said it when the microphone was off or not. But as a new small business owner, that's a good thing, a good problem to have, to be late. So to be late getting home, that means you're doing business. So, and while I will take this chance to shamelessly plug a company that my company, Pest and Class Exterminating, is in. We're doing a deal with them. It's Misfit Hounds out of Hampton, Tennessee, and they are a hound dog rescue. And so if anybody in the Tri-Cities sees this and needs exterminating services, you can call Pest and Class, my company there, and get you if you order a new service, 10% of the service we're giving to Misfit Hounds to go help hound dogs. So even if you can't rescue, you can donate, or you can go through my company and give a donation as part of getting a service that you probably need anyway. So definitely check that out. And that's all my shameless plugs for tonight.
If you go and order any of my music off of any of my sites right now, no, actually, you have to use my DistroKid. If you'll use my DistroKid link, I will donate money to a group that actually euthanizes hound dogs. They're good hound dogs too, like real good hound dogs, and we just do it needlessly, aimlessly. It's an absurdist. It's sort of like an absurdist charity to piss people off into saving more hound dogs. So hopefully, a few, maybe very few of you will donate to mine, and then by proxy, it'll motivate a lot of people to hate.
We're doing a pro wrestling thing here. Tim's the heel.
I'm the heel. I'm the one that stomps the puppies despite having 2 puppies in my basement.
I'm Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and he's the Iron Sheik, but we both work together to save the puppies.
There you go.
But no, if just in case that the beginning of this show, I forgot to turn my mixing board on, so there wasn't any audio for like the first 2 minutes of me rambling. But I did mention in that first 2 minutes, and I'm not sure that I mentioned it again, so I will go ahead. Tim is playing up there at Saltville at Pap's East End, and that is Saltville, Virginia. He's playing this Saturday the 8th for a songwriters round, and Tim plays regularly all the time, but this is going to be a pretty cool one because it's one he was explaining earlier in the show that he's organizing, and it's got Moose Roberts on it, and really you never know where things are going to go with a Moose Roberts show, just like he doesn't know what he's going to record whenever he does recording. A lot of times he'll just make it up as he goes when he's playing live. Moose is one of those rare performers that is just so inspired all the time. I mean, you can't turn him off. You sit down with him and he picks up a guitar and he just makes up songs. I mean, so many songs. He's recorded, I think, 73 albums that he has on his Bandcamp. That's only a fraction of what he's actually recorded. And most of the time he just sits around playing songs that he doesn't remember, and he writes a song that, you know, is very catchy and very fun, and then he forgets all about it and sings another one. Or like I said, he doesn't write it, he just sings them. So yeah, definitely check out Moose and Tim on their Spotify, Bandcamp, all those links. And if you're in our local area, drive 20 miles or 20 minutes north of Bristol, Virginia, up to Saltville and go check out that Songwriters Night this weekend. Oh yeah, Moose is a beast, Bill. I know I've talked about it on the show before. I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but I recorded an album with Moose, and I went over to his house, and there was Steven Schonecker, the sound engineer, had everything set up already, and John Snyder Scabo, the table steel or lap steel player, he was all set up. I walked in there, I plugged in my, I think I played my Telecaster through a Vox AC4, turned it on, they set a microphone in front of it. Moose said, "Here's what we're playing," and started playing. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this is what we're playing. And played along, and then the next thing I know, like 6 weeks later, Moose has made an incredible record, and I was like, I don't even remember playing any of that stuff. And it sounds cool. But yeah, that's how he does a lot of his records. He comes up with an idea, he invites over, for a couple songs, or not, just invites a couple of musicians over and says, let's play some songs. And then, you make some music, and he goes back and puts crazy lyrics over it that he, thinks up on the spot, doesn't write them beforehand. And then there's the songs, and they're incredible. But yeah, it's mooseroberts.bandcamp.com. And yeah, Tim is the artist known as Tim on all of your major platforms where you can listen to music. You can listen to him for free.
In case someone's wondering, I basically only listened to Prince. That's why. No, it was a reference to Ego Death. In case like the artist known as Tim. Tim Nate's boring. You know what I'm saying? Probably the same reason you went as the corned beef. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. There's 100 Cliffs out there. There's 10 million Tims. You Google Tim Nave, and the very first one that pops up is the lead guy of the photography department at the University of Tennessee. Very common name.
Cliff Brooks is like a motivational speaker, and then there's like a horror novelist in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it's funny because the Bay Area horror novelists, they all hate Cliff Brooks, and so they always write a character named Cliff Brooks into their stories that they can kill off, and they have a competition. Like I said, this is the San Francisco Bay Area horror novel tradition that they kill off. They have a competition to try to kill off Cliff Brooks in the most gruesome way, in the most creative way. Those are the Cliff Brookses that I know. But to me, Cliff Brooks sounds like a folk singer. You think about it. It sounds like a fake name if you think about it. And then my mom's name is Spring Brooks, so it almost sounds like made up names. Cliff Amal, that's right, Cliff Burton. And
faker names, but at least you got a name that resembles a country artist.
Alvin Karpis was Public Enemy #1 in the 1930s. And you got 2 A's instead of 2 I's. Let's see here. I did have some stuff I wanted to show y'all a little bit here. I showed you the AI stuff. We talked about the Little Winters. Like I said, mostly I just wanted to shoot the shit tonight with y'all and get together and hang out because I didn't really have time to put together a lot of news-heavy show. But, we did have that school shooting here in Nashville. Where the woman who, supposedly dressed as a man, she didn't really, she didn't really look transsexual to me. She just looked like a butch woman. She didn't seem like she was trying to dress as a man. Maybe she was, but they always used her, her female name. The news did and stuff, which is rare because you would normally they normally are very careful to tiptoe around these people's pronouns and stuff, and so they started saying, well, this was a female shooter. I was like, well, that's crazy. When have we heard of a female shooter? So I was almost expecting it to be a transgender woman or a biological male who was dressing as female. And then within the strange turn of events, we saw the heroic Nashville police do the thing that the Uvalde police should have done. That the rather than waiting hours and waiting when more people die, they went straight in. They heard the gunfire and they ran towards it. That's what men do. Not just men. That's what I think we lost Tim. Nope. Did we lose Tim? Yep, we lost him. Hopefully he'll call back. But that's what men do, and that's what oh, his phone died. So Tim will be back in just a minute. But that's what real human beings do. That's what people who have a heart do. If there are children in danger, you run and you help them. I don't know what was in the Uvalde situation. These men were so afraid, and they it's like, oh, we needed body armor. They had body armor. They had posted on Facebook like a week before about how they just got new body armor. But even if you didn't, if there's somebody in a classroom with children and they're intent on harm, if 10 people have to get mowed down going through that door to stop them, you get mowed down and you stop them. I mean, obviously you don't want that to happen, but that's your duty as a human being with a heart and soul and a conscience. And that's what these men in Nashville did. They acted calmly, proficiently, and they did a good job. And I'm no simp for the police, because the police enforce a lot of unconstitutional, a lot of illegal, a lot of immoral laws. But in this case, they were saving innocent people, and they definitely need to be commended for that. So, but anyway, in the wake of this, we saw, of course, a lot of people did memorials for the 3 children and the 3 adult staff members of the school who died, who were killed. And then there was this whole other thing, and I couldn't have, such a thing would be unthinkable in the world of 20 years ago. The idea that these media companies started sympathizing with this person because she allegedly identified as a transgender person, or as a person of the opposite sex. Now listen, if you really feel like that you're a person of the opposite sex, I'm not going to give you shit about it. You can live your life. You can exist, as transgender activists so often say. We just want to exist. I don't care if you exist. I don't want any harm to befall you. I have no ill will toward you as an individual. But that does not mean that is a shield that anyone can use to get away with heinous crimes. But that's how it's being used. That's how our media is portraying this. That this woman was a victim of an oppressive parents who wouldn't accept her transgender lifestyle. Never mind that they let her live with them. Okay, she didn't dress as a male or as a butch woman, I guess, when she was at home. But her parents, they were accepting of her as a person. They were not accepting of her lifestyle. And what more could you ask, honestly, of people who this is such a thing that seems absurd. It's so contrary to the natural order of things that they've observed for their whole lives. How can you blame them for not being able to accept something like this? Again, you do your thing, if that's what you do. But the idea that because that you identify this way, or you feel this way, or in many cases I think you pretend to feel this way, because it's a sure way to, it's a shield. You could literally shoot up a Catholic school or a Presbyterian school full of children, and these people will carry water for your agenda. That would be like if let's just say if that'd be like if Fox News started like doing Taliban propaganda videos after 9/11. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, the Taliban didn't actually do 9/11, but it was connected to the ideology. It was a similar ideology. That would be an absurd thing to think about. And again, a friend of mine sent me. It was a drag time story hour. I forget what city it was in. There was a picture of it, and this man wearing a skirt did not even. I mean, it was clownish. I don't think he was trying to pass as a biological female. I think he was, doing a drag costume, and that's fine for drag shows. But why do you feel the need to perform this in front of children? And they'll say that, they want to normalize it. They don't want people to hate. Well, it's not that people hate you. It's really not. It's this shield that you think you can hide behind while you change the whole, basically go against the established moral fabric of society. You have to expect that people are going to resist that. And unless you are being militant, you have to be understanding. But so there's so much of a militant edge to this whole movement. And I think, again, I don't think it's represented by everyday gay, lesbian, and transgender people. I think there is a corporate, mass-marketed level that is pumped out amongst the people, and it's shown as being beneficial now. You can be a hero. You can even, you can commit the most heinous atrocities, but if you feel like you were born in the wrong body, or if you just say that you do, who are we to question you? You can commit the most heinous atrocities, and the media will not only not condemn you, they will sympathize with you. They will write puff pieces on you about how good of an artist you were. You could have been a children's artist, Audrey. But instead you decided to shoot up a school full of kids. And in the wake of this, there was your predictable movement from the political left wing to jump on the banning of guns. And I don't think the political left wing understands how authoritarian the banning of guns is. I don't think they understand it. Because what they think of is, you with that gun have the ability to harm somebody. But what they don't think of is that when you don't have a gun and only the government has guns, what can they do with that ability? Here's Tim coming back in. But to finish my point up on that, hey there, Tim. But to finish my point up on that, within a few days of this tragedy, the political left predictably capitalized on it by sending a bunch of young people in to storm the Tennessee Capitol building and disrupt the affairs and sit outside of the speaker's chambers and all these things that in January 6th, people were charged with. People who were not even violent were charged with, felonies that they and locked up for 2 years, not charged with anything, because they entered a public building like these people down here. So I'm hearing a lot of calls. Tim and I have been talking about the ricochet, where we have this, this predilection, this misgiven. It's like we can see the future. I'm sorry, you can, say we're crazy or whatever, but we see a thing coming where the political right takes power and uses that power to just obliterate the political left. And I myself, I am more sympathetic towards the political right. I'm a libertarian anarchist, but I understand what makes societies function, and that's relationships, and that's marketplaces, that's people living and working together, but for their own self-interest. Very similar to what Ayn Rand pushes with, the objectivist philosophy. Ayn Rand was more of an absolutist on it, so of course she had to, really puff that up. But I identify with a lot of that, and I feel like that's truly what makes a functional society, is people working for their own self-interest, and as a result of that, benefiting the whole of the society. But Ayn Rand was like against charity completely and stuff like that, which I'm not. In Atlas Shrugged, she had one of the protagonists, like, he had a family that was basically a bunch of lazy guys, and he had created this new metal that was going to revolutionize the industry, and he just cut his family off completely. Said, "You guys aren't going to mooch off me." His mom and dad and his brothers, and there were a bunch of pathetic assholes to drive the point home. But that was Ayn Rand, basically making the I don't know what you'd call it, but making the very blunt point that, if you teach a man how to fish, or if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. But
kind of her whole big point was also that, wasn't it 10% of the population holds up to 90%, and if 10% ever decide just to say fuck it, we'd all be screwed.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of our society today reflects a lot of that, because, and I don't think she predicted it exactly, but not like affirmative action like so many people said. I'm not a proponent of that, but I can understand at least saying, like, okay, you lived in Mississippi where black people were slaves up until the 1860s, and the white people already ran everything. It was hard for black people to get a foothold in any kind of business, education, or whatever. We're going to make it possible for you to get a foothold as a black person in that system. Okay, that's understandable. We have diversity hires, and every company has to have a certain size. If you don't hire enough women, if you don't hire enough gay people, if you don't hire enough black people, then you're in trouble. And I don't necessarily think, I don't at all think hiring those people in and of itself is a problem, but to hire somebody simply based on those characteristics is not productive for a business, and it's not productive in general. So I think a lot of Ayn Rand's ideas, and it's not just, and again, it's not just race, gender, or socioeconomic standards. There's a whole variety. You could take potheads, for example, musicians. I mean, there's whole sects of society that don't necessarily fall into the corporate ladder, as it were. But regardless of that, if you're hiring into these classes based on those classes rather than your ability to do something, or if you're hiring based on anything other than the ability to do the job, you're going to end up in a situation like that, especially when we had a situation like in COVID where people were making more money on what you call it, unemployment, than they were making actually going to work. That really took the work out of a lot of people. And a lot of people figured out how they could get together and share a place and use their government benefits and pay their bills and not have as much. And they don't care. They don't have to work. And that's kind of where the universal basic income comes in. You either don't want to work, you don't have to work, or there's no jobs. So there has to be some way to provide you with a means to sustain yourself. Because as bad as the general voters' attitude is towards one another, I don't think we can actually watch on a mass scale, at least in America, people literally starving to death, and be okay with that. So basically, to sum it all up, we're in a kind of a stagnant economy where, like, prices are going up, but people are finding a way around the price increase, whether it be combining resources, cutting back, and the demand for a lot of this stuff and demand for a lot of services is not going up. So it's kind of we're at this place where people are like, oh, I don't need to work. I don't really need anything. And the people producing things are like, we really need you to buy these things. We really need people to work for us to keep our system going. And meanwhile, you've got the whole, the UBI idea, the Universal Basic Income, we're going to provide some sort of sustenance for these people who fall into this category of being unable or unwilling to work a job or do something productive or in some other way contribute meaningfully to society.
My cult will have something very similar to UBI. It'd be UBC.
Universal Basic Cigarettes?
Yes.
Do they still make basic cigarettes?
Huh?
Do they still make basic cigarettes? I've not seen basics in forever.
I don't know. I forgot they existed until you said that. The only reason I even know what cigarettes are is because up until I met my wife, almost every girl I ever dated smoked.
If she smokes, she pokes.
Yeah.
But no, they're now basics. I used to joke that was it was made by Philip Morris, and that I used to joke that was the sweepings from the Marlboro factory. They would just sweep them up and wrap them up in a paper. But I've not seen basics in forever. But it could still be out there. Let's check up on the chat here. Sorry, I've been rambling for a while, so let's see what y'all have to say. Spill's checking out your doggy. Your golden doodle. Is that a Labradoodle or a golden doodle?
I got a golden doodle, and I'm not sure what the other one is. It's a poodle mix. Yeah, the I don't know what color it is. Golden, yellow. Mm-hmm. The yellow one is a lot smarter. That's all. That's all the thing I've noticed so far.
My dogs.
They're doodling everything, but I do get it because they are smart, and that's something. Yeah, I had wiener dogs last, and wiener dogs are real stubborn. Mm-hmm. My biggest thing was it's like I don't want to have to. I want to have a dog that if it got out, I'd have to worry about being dead immediately. Mm-hmm. I wanted something that could kind of take care of itself, that'd be smart, and not give me too much trouble. So
yeah,
we went 2 because we're nuts. But like,
I know that's a good thing you did, man, because it's not you guys can't be home all the time, and those 2 dogs will really appreciate each other's company. Cause
I think so. I know
dogs get lonely.
But when we went and got them from the breeder, I was sitting there and I had this thought in my head that if an alien race abducted me and I didn't have a choice in the matter, I'd want to have a buddy.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I was thinking. I was like, I'd want another person to at least be there with me if I was going to be a pet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they say guinea pigs have to have a companion, or sometimes they will even grieve themselves to death with loneliness.
A guinea pig. I never had a guinea pig.
Yeah,
I had
I didn't either.
hamsters and fancy mice and all kinds of stuff. I never actually went full guinea pig. Almost went chinchilla until I realized they were nocturnal, and I didn't need any more to stay up at night.
I had dogs and cats and pigs and chickens and goats, and we ate the chickens and goats.
I had a lot of lizards and stuff. I never had a lot of. I mean, a lot of people I knew had farm animals and stuff, but we never had actual farm animals at my immediate family right outside our house or anything.
My dog now, I know what you mean. Like my Jack Russell, Orville Redenborker. He's been on the show a few times. Actually, he was on one of the first episodes. I think it was episode 8 when we did the Halloween show. I had just gotten Orville Redenborker, and he was our Iron Mountain Hour correspondent while we checked out some of the haunted sites in Carter County, Tennessee. And he, but I'm looking in, trying to find him a good and affordable, and hopefully made in the U.S. coyote or hawk jacket, because there's a non-zero possibility that when little white Orville Redenborker, the Jack Russell Terrier, is running out in my backyard in the middle of the night, that owl might see him. A great horned owl is huge, and to try to fly off with him, or that the golden eagle or the bald eagle that I've been seeing around here, or even the red-tailed hawk might get an eye on him and go down and try to get him. So I always let him out with either my border collie or my healer pug mix, and they're both pretty aggressive towards other animals. So at least he has some kind of backup out there. But I do worry about that other animals getting a hold of the little guy.
I think I'm going to get me some goats next year.
I was considering that too. I don't really have room. I'm going to do chickens this year, and I could probably do 2 goats in the area that I've got, but I'd have to cut my dog area in half, I just wouldn't really want to mix the two animals too much. My dogs are all right. If you bring a new animal into them when it's a baby, they're cool with it. But, if you bring an adult animal, they won't have anything to do with it. Oh, let's see. Missed a bunch of chats here. Spill says, wait a minute. We missed way more here. And we got the puppers coming in. Spill's talking about daddy grooming the baby. I'm not sure exactly what I said to
Picking the puppers out of his eyes.
Oh, okay.
He's getting big to be a baby. Good Lord, they're getting heavy. Super heavy.
Oh, yeah, those guys will get 80 to 100 pounds easy.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that every day when I give them food. They're already heavier than the full-grown wiener I got upstairs.
Yeah, my cattle pug Stock, I took him to the vet recently. He puked up a big bunch of blood, and yeah, I was worried. So I took him to the vet because it turned out what he had done. He had actually chewed up my daughter. He chewed up her. We'd left him in her room while we let the other dogs out in the house, and he got jealous because you get all 3 of my dogs together and they get mad, and most of the time it's cool, but then all of a sudden it's not. And so we just keep 2 of them apart from one another, and Orville can go between the 2. But anyway, we left the pug healer mix, left him in my daughter's room, and he chewed up her electric blanket cord and swallowed some of the copper. And copper's toxic to dogs anyway, but the wire actually cut up his stomach, and he was bleeding, and he puked up a bunch of blood. We found out that later, but took him to the vet, and that sucker, his healthy weight's probably 45 to 50 pounds. He weighed 63 pounds. He has been stealing Orville's food. We didn't have to worry about it for the longest time. Like Orville's like 18 months old, and
thank you, Alvin. Sitting here all by myself, blessed.
for most of the time, Orville was eating his food, and Stock wouldn't touch it because he knows it's not his food. But then all of a sudden, unbeknownst to us, Stock starts eating Orville's food, and now all of a sudden he's huge. So we had to feed Orville by himself. Let's see here. Alvin says, wait a minute, here we go. Alvin says, we're reliving the stagflation that I went through in the 1970s, where the economy is slow and inflation is high and money is tight. Yeah, you got a lot of money, but it takes a lot of money to buy anything, and then you got to actually have to find the item that you actually want to buy. You go to the Dollar General store, you look at those shelves, man. A lot of empty spaces on them, and a lot of raised prices. And Spill's talking about, isn't universal basic income communism or socialism? To a degree, yeah. It's also kind of feudalism, and it's also what's the other word for it? I mean, really, it's part of authoritarianism. It's basically you cause, through your governance, one group or another to lose their access to their ability to procure resources. And so to avoid appearing as a monster, you have to provide something to them so they don't starve to death, or, you know, that's pretty much it. So that's kind of the idea. But in this case, rather than governments, we're probably looking at corporations paying universal basic income. Basically, just like anybody's ever known a business, a small business in particular, know there's kind of these kind of I guess co-ops or something, where you get with other businesses and you say, hey, everybody that wants to join this group, if you provide a service to somebody in the group, you will get a credit for a service from anybody else in the group. And if somebody in the group asks you to provide a service, you provide that service, and then you have a credit. And say I'm an exterminator, and somebody has a hotel, and we're both part of this trade group, and the hotel needs me to come and treat for bed bugs. And I don't need a hotel room. That's what the hotel room can offer me. But they can offer a hotel room to somebody else who does need one in the group, and somebody else in the group who, may not need my exterminating services. They may offer a product or service that I want. So it's basically, it's part of what Alvin sent me talking about, Templar banking, and it uses the dollar as a basis, but honestly it could be anything. But the universal basic income is for the people who maybe don't have the gumption to do that, who maybe don't have the gumption like Tim to go out and as a musician, find venues to set himself up, and where they will pay him to play, where he's, I don't know if y'all know this, Tim's a working musician. He more than replaced, if I'm not mistaken, your income from your day job. But
the bar, before you continue with that, the bar for replacing my day job wasn't very high.
Well,
I didn't quit a college degree job.
Well, all things considered, though, the fact is you took the gumption to go out there and make your own way, and you do that in a lot of ways. I mean, you own properties and stuff, don't you? So
I do. It was a business venture I was in before I was doing the music full time, but probably won't continue much further with, just because of the rush of people to Appalachia's kind of really hurt the real estate. I don't know. I've always wanted to do that. I don't really. I guess I've never taken the time to trace it back. Maybe I don't care, but I always do sort of look for not the opposite, because I think people would confuse that with like counterculture. I always look for, if a lot of people are doing one thing, there's probably a better way to do it, is arrogant. And sometimes it really backfires on me, but sometimes it works out.
I find myself in the same position, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but that's how I ended up with the TurboGrafx 16.
There you go.
If anybody remembers that ill-fated system.
You wanted to be different, and ended up with a turd of a system.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like, all my friends growing up, they liked in the early 1990s, the Chicago Bulls and the Dallas Cowboys were the top sports teams. And so everybody loved the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan and the Dallas Cowboys and Emmitt Smith and, you know, what's his name? Alvin, I can't remember his name. Troy Aikman and that whole crew there. And it's like, yeah, those guys are easy to like because they always win. Give me somebody who's an underdog. Give me the Mighty Ducks. You know, give me the expansion team in the NBA, just because I don't want to root for the same thing that everybody else is rooting for, who's already the biggest thing, and that's the only reason they're rooting for him.
I pulled for the Pacers.
Yeah, there you go. I did too for a while. And you know what? You know why I pulled for the Pacers for a while? Because when I was 9 years old, I played Pee Wee basketball, and I was number 31, and the only decent player in the NBA who was number 31 was Reggie Miller. So I was like, I guess I fucking like the Pacers now.
I liked it because Detlef Shrimp was with them for just a minute, and I thought his name was funny.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I kept getting his basketball card in almost every pack I ever opened. I was like, I guess Detlef Shrimp is my guy then.
Yeah, I think he was number 31 too, dude.
Was he?
Yeah, Shrimp, he was number 31. He played on the Pacers later too. Yeah, I forgot about that. He was number 31 when he played for the Supersonics, I believe.
I'm gonna Google him. In the NFL, in the NBA, the football, in the NFL, I pulled for the Rams, and it took them up until a few years. It took until a few years ago to finally start seeing anything.
Well, I started pulling for the Braves. But the reason I liked the Braves is because they were in the I think 92, 93, or 91, 92 World Series. The Braves and the Twins had come, both of them. The Braves had been last place team in the National League, and the Twins had been the last place team in the American League. And the very next year, they were in a World Series. And so that made me pull for both of those guys. I actually wanted the Braves to win just because they were closer to me, but I wasn't too disappointed because Kirby Puckett from the Twins actually played minor league ball in Elizabethton for the Elizabethton Twins. So I've always pulled for the underdog and for the little engine that could types, and your Michael Jordans and your superstar guys, those were never the guys for me. I like Spud Webb.
Apparently, Detlef Shrimp was on an episode of Parks and Rec.
Oh yeah? Oh yeah, that's right. He was at Tom Haverford's club when he was opening the club. He paid Detlef Shrimp to stand there and shoot basketball.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Spill says she was born in 71, so she doesn't remember that stagflation of the 70s. I don't remember either, but I remember hearing about the gas crunch, and I know they fucked the shit out of the damn big block V8s and cut them down to like, you'd be running a 440 V8 in 1970, making 400 or 500 horsepower, and in 1971 you're running a 440 big block V8 in a Pontiac Firebird making 195 horsepower. And that didn't help the gas mileage any. It just made the cars suck. I had an 85 Z28 Camaro, 5.7 liter 350 V8, 4-barrel. I can't remember if this. I think this one had a 4-barrel carburetor. I had one with a 4-barrel carburetor and one with fuel injection. I can't remember which one it was, but this sucker was loud. It got like 15 miles a gallon at best on the highway, about 8 to 10 driving around town. It would smoke the tires like nobody's business, but the 0 to 60 time on it was like 10 seconds. They really screwed the cars up with those emissions, but they've got over that now. You've driven new cars?
I've not driven the modern sports cars probably since the last new Mustang I drove or anything was probably about 15 years ago.
Well, the newest Mustangs now is they have a 4-cylinder turbo Mustang, makes 300 horsepower. That's the base model. That's more horsepower. That's a faster car than your hottest 5.0 back in the 80s and 90s. Like way faster, not even close. And then your V8s and or even faster. But let's see here. Spill says she's always been able to stretch $1, but it's not going far lately. Yeah, I know what you mean, Spill. I know what you mean. It's and then there's also, they call it shrinkflation too. Alvin, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You're talking about stagflation. Shrinkflation is where the companies will trick you by basically, orange juice is a good example. And ice cream is another good example. You think about orange juice. When I was a kid, you bought a carton of orange juice, a paper carton of orange juice. It was 64 ounces. It was half a gallon. And then over the years, they slowly took that down to 59 ounces and charged you the same price. And they had to raise the price a little bit. Then they took it down to 52 ounces. And then they raised the price again. And now you're paying like $11, $12 a gallon for orange juice. Oddly enough, milk has stayed okay. Let's see. Spill says animals should have a companion. Already read that, and yes, I think they should. Alvin says, no kidding, get rid of payments just as hard as you can. That's how I made it through the 70s. Yeah, debt will do you in, man. That's one of the things that I wanted to make sure I had taken care of before I went into business. Is I wanted to have enough cash to start the business. I wanted to have all my debt cleared out except for my house payment. You know, that's I'm not going to wait till I pay my house off to try to invest in my own future. But I feel like a lot of what I was getting around to earlier, Tim, is a lot of guys like us who are willing to take calculated risks on our future are going to be fine no matter what the future brings. We're going to find a way to adapt and overcome and survive, but there are some people who just don't care to, and they haven't had to care to. And that's who the universal basic income is so we don't seem like monsters when the powers that be basically leave those people behind because they're trying to avoid a revolt. But the fact is there should be a revolt, revolution, something. This system that we're living under in the world and in America has been set up to take advantage of us. It's been set up for the benefit of the elite few at the top to restrict the vertical movement through society of the lower classes. Now again, like I said, there's this beautiful thing about America. People who can adapt and overcome can make it. But there's a lot of barriers for people who try. And I mean, just as one example, think about the licensing system. To cut hair in Tennessee, you have to have a license. You have to have a certification.
You can cut hair for free.
I'm sorry?
Only to charge. You can cut hair
yeah, that's right. If you want to do something for a living, yeah, you have to have a license. You can cut all the people's hair you want to for free, and you don't have to have a license. But you start charging money for it, you start doing it for a living, that's when they want to get into your business.
I do license.
Huh?
And I don't really even have a job title.
What did you say before that?
I said I had to get a license to do what I do, and it's just not even a real job title. Sole proprietor in entertainment. Like, that could be anything. That could be a DJ.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean basically you're paying the government permission, a fee, and asking permission to do something that you could do on your own. And in my view, it's just a barrier to prevent other people from doing so. Like in a lot of these trade businesses in Tennessee, like I'll give the example, I ran into it in my business too in other ways, but I won't really get into that. I'll tell you about my dad. My dad, when he was, it was in the early 1990s, and my dad was in his early 40s. He had worked at North American Rayon for, my whole life at the time, and he got fired, laid off, I can't remember which. Either way, he ended up not having that job, and he said, well, you know what? I've got some money put back. I'm going to buy a work van. I'm going to buy a well drilling rig. I'm going to go out and start drilling wells for people. I'm going to market my services to people. I'm going to drill the best wells that anybody can drill, and the best wells, okay? And I'm going to drill them good, drill them deep, and...
Talk porn now.
Yeah.
Drill them good, drill them deep.
Drill them over and over again, okay? Until they're wet and gushing. that was his plan. So he invested the money in it. And, there wasn't the internet back then. So it's not like you could just you could have gone to the library, but I went to the library one time in the early 2000s. My brother and I had an idea for delivering beer, which a lot of people are doing now. But back then, the law was so restrictive on it, there was no way you could set up a beer delivery service. You think about that, a beer delivery service. So drunk people, when they're partying at their house, and that's the whole idea my brother had, that they don't have to leave to go get more beer. We will deliver your beer to you for a fee, but there's a government regulation in front of that. There's a law that says you can't do that. Now, like I said, they've changed that since then. Now, this was over 20 years ago. He and I had this idea.
Right.
Huh?
You don't deliver alcohol. You deliver a party.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. Tim comes in. He cracks open a beer himself and goes. He goes whoop, whoop, for 5 minutes.
Well,
and I leave and somebody.
That reminds me, man. We did, and I'll get back to the story of my dad in just a second. Don't let me forget this because I want to finish this point. But that reminds me, we did when I was playing with a band called, let's see, what was this band called? Hating Hollywood. That's what it was. Playing with a band called Hating Hollywood. And this was probably 2006 to 8 area, something like that. And I had been a part of a band called South of Sanity that had kind of fallen apart, and some of the members got together and formed Hating Hollywood and basically took up all of the gigs that we had already had as South of Sanity. And Mike Jones was actually singing for us at that time. If y'all know Mike Jones of aluminum baseball bat fame. But anyway, now I've lost my train of thought. I got thinking about Mike Jones. So I was talking about my dad. I was talking about the licensing. I was talking about Hating Hollywood. Oh yeah, okay. Now I'm back on track. So Hating Hollywood, we'd got together and we wanted to basically get as many people out as we could to know who we were and stuff. So we went up to Stony Creek and we went to all the gas stations up there and we just hung out and talked to people at the gas pumps. And we handed out flyers that said, show at such and such address. We used it at my buddy's house. He had a house that had been framed and roofed and had walls on it, but that was it. And so it was a big open house, no drywall or anything like that, and did have plumbing. And we bought a couple of kegs of beer. We put on this flyer. It was actually called what was it called? Beef stock. That's what we called it, because I was corned beef brisket at the time with that band, and it was Beef Stock 09. That's right. Now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm remembering. But we had we made these flyers that said Beef Stock 09 because it was right next to a cow field. And the night of the show, we went around to all the gas stations in Stony Creek and we gave out this flyer that said $5 admission, free beer if you're over 21. And so anybody that was in, anybody that came in, we checked their ID. And now I found out this is not legal. But the statute of limitations is up on it. But we really thought we were following the law. We were trying to do that. So we passed these flyers out everywhere. And dude, we had one of the biggest party shows I've ever been to in my life. Probably 500 people came through that house over the course of that night. And emptied 2 kegs and bottles of liquor, and we played till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, we tried to adapt and overcome. We can't sell beer. We're not a licensed venue, but what can we do? We can give you free beer if you'll pay to come see our show. And it turned out we actually didn't. We made even with all those people there, we made exactly enough money to pay for the 2 kegs of beer and not a penny more, because the gals that we had asked to check IDs and take tickets, they just decided they were just going to come on up to the party and they didn't want to miss it because there were so many people coming up. So most of the people didn't pay us at all, but we did make enough to pay for our kegs. But to get back to my dad back in the 90s, he had this idea. He was going to drill wells for people. He was going to make money drilling wells. That was going to be his profession. He was going to take charge of his life and his his family situation, his financial situation, only to find out that when he attempted to start this business for drilling wells, and again, this was before the internet. You couldn't go on the internet and search it easily, and to go to the library, like I said, when me and my brother did it for the beer delivery service, it took us hours and hours and hours to find out this was actually something that we couldn't do. Well, Dad, he found out that you have to have a license, not just a business license, but a special license to drill wells in Tennessee. And in order to get this license, you must work for a licensed well drilling company for at least 2 years. Well, there was only one licensed well drilling company in the Tri-Cities at the time. And if he's the only guy around, why is he going to hire my dad, for instance?
Hiring in competition.
Yeah, because he's basically using this licensing system, and I feel like a lot of the trade categories in Tennessee, rather than protect consumer safety, because people gotta have insurance. You got insurance as a small business owner. You don't need the government regulations to protect you. If you've damaged somebody in some way, they are going to sue you, and they are going to collect from your insurance. So even with the government in place, that happens all the time. People get damaged by companies that they purchase services from, and those services have to reimburse them for their losses. So that only requires the government as an enforcement. It does not require the government to be a regulation, to license people, to give people permission, to charge money and have requirements to give people permission to engage in their trade of choice. So long story short, my dad in the 1990s, spent probably $10,000 of his savings to start this business. And the only thing that stopped him was licensing and government registration. So when people tell you things like licenses and permits are not restrictions, they're full of shit.
Well, mine was $21.
Do what?
So I think my license was like $21.
Well, your regular business license is no big deal. But like I said, in my field, you do have to work for a licensed company in order to be able. You have to be certified in order to become licensed, and in order to be certified, you have to work for a licensed company. And then there is like I can apply pesticides to the outside of people's homes, and it's the same pesticides that the people who apply pesticides to people's lawns use, but it requires a separate license. So I, as a structural pest control operator, I am going to have a real hard time getting hired by somebody who does lawns, because then I could get 2 years in experience in lawns and have my own license to spray lawns. So it really is more of a way for the people who have established themselves as the movers and shakers of society, the small businesses that basically run the towns, that, the bigger versions, they do move a lot of weight in the state and so on. It's a way for them to protect their standing. And if you scale that up to the federal government, it just gets more and more restrictive and more intrusive. And that is why, like I said, if you're willing to navigate that landscape, you can be successful. But it takes gumption, it takes heart, and it takes not giving up, and it takes being determined. And that's just not a characteristic that's been bred into us as the sons and daughters of, of baby boomers and Generation Jones. That's not something that they really bred into us, because they were the sons and daughters of the greatest generation. The greatest generation coming back from World War II had created such abundance and such luxury that the world had never seen such a thing. And they wanted to provide for their children better than what their parents had provided to them. And that's what they said to their children. I just want you to have a better life than what I had. And then the Generation X, or Generation X and millennial parents, they did that to their children. And the thing is, they had a pretty good life. Like I talked about on the show with Jordan, my grandpa, my papa was a pretty bad dude. My father was a less bad dude. I think he was a good dude overall. But he progressed from his father. He learned from it. And I learned from my father. And I'm not perfect by any means. And I'm sure my son will look at some of my mistakes when he's grown. Well, he pretty much is grown. My son's 17. But when he has a family, I'm sure he'll look at my mistakes and learn from them. So I don't want to disparage past generations too much, because that's my dad and his dad were pretty hard dudes. My dad ran away and joined the Army when he was, I think, 16. Because his father was such a harsh person to live with, he decided he'd rather join the Army. And then, but even still, my dad was a pretty harsh dude, seeming to me. But now, I recognize what he was doing and why he was doing it. And it is not because he's mean. It's because when you let society and our children become too soft, they become dependent on things. They become less inclined to provide for themselves. They become less inclined to take risks. And the risks are what advance our society on the small and large level. And again, that, like I was talking about me and Tim, we have the proclivity to take such risks, and we have the ability and the gumption to do so. And hopefully we succeed.
Yeah, so I wouldn't put too much stock into stuff that I do. I failed more.
Well, I am going to, Tim. I don't think you give yourself enough credit, and I, we can always grow as people, and I think that's one of the ways we do it, is by putting ourselves out there and trying really hard at something, especially something new, and especially something that is unknown. And that's how, that's how the Pacific Ocean was discovered, man. That's how the ocean was crossed. That's how the world was transgressed. Yeah, we may not transgressed, transnavigated, circumnavigated. That's what makes humanity amazing, is that ability. And I think that's what they're trying to stifle out of us with this universal basic income thing. They want the folks that are on the top of this thing, that never earned what they got, that their parents left it to them and taught them the way. And I can respect that to a degree, but they are using that knowledge to basically stifle us and smother us out of ever being any competition to them. And it's, like I said, it scales down. And I think that a big part of this universal basic income is to make it okay to not take a risk, to not go out there and do something for yourself, to not say, hey, I'm going to quit my mundane day job that, yeah, I like the people, I don't mind the job, but it's just not fulfilling, and I'm going to do something that fulfills me as a person. They don't want you to do that. They don't want you hooking up with other people who are doing things that fulfill them as people. They don't want you building communities based on your ability to produce, to provide, to take risks, to make relationships, to do everything that they have put systems in place to stop us from doing, to where we don't have to do that. We don't have to go out to make, relationships to protect our community because we have the police. We don't have to go out and, make relationships to make sure that we have sustenance for our family because we have the grocery store, or food stamps, or whatever it may be, whatever ease. And I'm not against modern conveniences. I think they're amazing. I think we should take advantage of them. But the overall system is designed to reward mediocrity and to reward just subpar performance, or just no performance whatsoever. And that's because they don't want you to perform. They don't want you to be able to go out and drill a well as good as them. They want you to have to come to them and ask them for permission to learn to drill wells and for permission to make a living drilling wells. And then it scales up.
It's been a long time since I've had raisinets. I think I would like to have some.
You know what? I don't mind a raisinette every now and then. Let's see here. Let's catch up on the chat before we finish the last topic here. And we have gone long, and I'm sorry. I've just been enjoying myself talking, and I appreciate y'all listening to me ramble. And Tim, thank you for listening to me ramble. Let's catch up on the chat here. Alvin's talking about his baby brother born in 71, same age as Spill. She has 2 cats. She's bipolar about them, and she loves the shit out of them when they zoom at 4 a.m. I'm not a happy mama. I love when my wife is not a happy mama. When my dogs zoom at 4 a.m., I love it. It cracks me up. The zoomies, yeah, Spill, the owls will get them. You got to watch out for that. Alvin is right there with Spill. Screech owl outside of Alvin's window. Yeah, screech owls are little bitty. They're like this. A hoot owl or a great horned owl, they're like this. They're enormous. Now, Jack Russells are bred for hunting foxes. So they're very, very scrappy. My little Orville Redenborker, he will tear the shit out of you if you're not careful when you're playing with him. He's got sharp little teeth, he's got strong little jaws, and he is quick. But an owl's a silent killer, and they swoop down from overhead, so... Your cats are spoiled rotten, huh, Spill? And Alvin says, bless you. Spill says, he says, bless you. I don't know if he sneezed or not, or if he's just, if you said something he found particularly endearing. Spill says, sometimes that happens. My sister has dogs she has to separate. Yeah, dude, mine, I wish they could all be buddies all the time, but, it is what it is. Let's see here. Alvin says, to Tim's point a while back, money and capitalism is all about control of resources, commerce, and ultimately people's lives. Absolutely. It is on the large scale. You know, on the small scale, it's just a means of exchange. But when you scale it up and you start involving the government, you start involving regulation, and somebody who has a bigger company can pay to get a senator elected who can return the favor by passing legislation that will require regulation that will shut out that company's competition. That's what we call crony capitalism. And then there's also the whole thing with, you know, no bid contracts and the government just giving out money to their friends and all that stuff. So that's not capitalism. I mean, it is, but it's not. Capitalism, something Karl Marx came up with. I'm going to say free markets. That's what I'm more about. Freedom and free markets and freedom of expression. Pretty much freedom of everything but to harm other people unprovoked.
What if I made a new system of government where you could harm other people?
Like the Purge?
No. More like the Purge all the time. More like a Wild West situation, you know?
Well, that would be one form of anarchy, but...
no UPI, free body armor.
Yeah, I like that. You know, societies tend to go towards an equilibrium of sorts. So I feel like we would achieve a similar equilibrium in an anarchist society versus a government tyranny society. But at the same time, part of this stuff we talked about with like the UBI and the lowering of standards and the promotion of mediocrity, I feel like a lot of this actually a lot of that actually keeps people from from doing that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I was looking at these chats here. Alvin says, "Amen." Well, check out those paws. Those are monsters.
All our toe beans are black, except for one pink toe bean that's a little dirty right now, so it's a little dirty looking.
Alvin says, "Amen. I was a self-employed consulting engineer for 27 years and left a regular job to go out on my own. And after that, in that environment, it does not matter what your career is." Yeah, dude, I worked in mental health for 19 years. Decided that wasn't what I wanted to do, and said before I get too old, I'm pretty much, it's time. I'm 40 years old. If I'm going to do something else, or I'm almost 40 years old, if I'm going to do something else, now's the time. I'm going to be too old if I wait much longer. So I got into exterminating, which is like a combination of a scientist and a garbage man, and I'm happy with that. So anyway, that's what I decided to go into career as, and then that took a leap of faith right there to quit, because I started at a higher level in my at a management position, as 20 years experience in my mental health position, to come in as an entry level worker and exterminator. I'll tell you what, that was no easy choice, but from there on, it was a lot easier to decide, hey, I'm all in on this. This is what I can do. This is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy, and I only have to do it for 20 more years. So let me go out there and get really good at it and make the best of it. And instead of taking this retirement money that I have from my previous job, instead of just keeping that till I'm old and spending it then, why don't I invest it in myself now? I mean, why don't I take what I've saved, instead of waiting until I'm too old to enjoy it? Why don't I use it to advance myself now? Why don't I better myself now? Why don't I take a whole new path and take a risk? Because playing it safe has kept me just enough money to pay the bills all the years. I'm tired of playing it safe. And that's how you get stuck. That's how you get stagnated. That's how you get stagflation. Is you don't take risks. You stay comfortable and you say, well, I don't want to lose what I have. But you got to be willing. You got to be willing. If you're going to work hard, it'll work out. For the most part.
For some people.
Yeah. Well, like I said, for the most part, I think if you're willing to work hard, I think it'll work out for you. Unless there are specific situations where that's not the case, but for the most part,
I think yes, but I do also think that some people need to understand that some things aren't going to work.
Yeah, you do have to. You do have to have, and I'm not saying I do, because I could still fall on my ass, but it does take a certain amount of planning and careful plotting, I guess you could say, or careful charting of your course. You can't just go out there and say, oh, I believe in myself, I'm going to do this thing, and go, without thinking it through. So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I didn't really have I don't know. Mine is, I guess my job is a little bit different in the fact that it's like if the shit hit the fan, it goes away. Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, people don't need live music, they need other things. And
I guarantee if the shit hits the fan, people are going to want live music. They're going to want that normality. I've thought about that before. Think about bards and minstrels. Sorry, I lost about the last 7 seconds of what you were saying because I was talking. I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
I said, like, I'm sure I could probably find some rich people that would want to keep me around as a court gesture sort of muse or something or whatever. But it's like,
was Mozart a court jester?
Yeah, it's the Renaissance, though. That wasn't really the same thing, I don't think. That wasn't the Renaissance. I don't even know what period Mozart was in. I guess my real point to that is, like, you have, like, clients, but, like, I wake up every day technically kind of unemployed because they can always just cancel all my gigs. You know, I mean, I guess I've still got my online income or whatever, which is very minimal, and I've still got some other online gigs that I do for, like, videos and stuff. But, like, live music, I don't know, it's a different one. I would not recommend I would not recommend anybody getting into like gig entertainment work unless it's just something they are psychotically motivated to do, because it's not stable. It is a very, very unstable business to be in.
And I'll tell
It's
you,
just
it'll drive you crazy
though.
trying to stay busy at it if you don't have the right attitude about it.
I mean, I guess I have the right attitude, but the real right attitude is just the ability to get told no every day.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's 90% rejection, and then that 10% of the time that you actually get to do it, you appreciate it because it is art or whatever, music.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's I don't know, it's a different gig. I wouldn't recommend. That's why I was saying, like, if you think that you can learn the field of pest control, and you're willing to put up with the chemicals and all that nasty stuff, the job hazard that goes with it, and you have the ability to manage your time, and you can put a business together, I think that's attainable for someone who has the capacity to discipline themselves to make sure all the steps go, and there's other factors that go, like intelligence, to figure out how to make business work to begin with. But I do think there is a personality type that goes with every single job, and I think I always wondered, like, what was wrong with all the musicians when I used to meet them, the ones that have stuck. Because I mean, it's not like being a pro level musician means you're the best. You just stuck with it. Just, you know what I mean? Like, it's the people who didn't quit that make it up to the highest level.
Absolutely.
Being good at work. I know a bunch of people who are fantastic that just never, quote unquote, made it because they had a job that paid them a whole lot better. So it'd been stupid for them to quit.
Yeah.
But like with the entertainment thing, it's like, I always wondered why all the ones that made it to that field always seem kind of messed up. Dude, I'm on the absolute bottom rung of the entertainment field, and I get it now. It's you just feel psycho to want to hang out in bars and stuff all the time.
No, I get it too, dude. And that's for me. I did. Let's see, 2000. I did 14 years of semi-professional musicianship with, and as I said, it was a progression. I started playing, lead guitar, and then I started my own band, and I started another own band, and blah, 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 blah. And it just was one after another of me decided I was going to try to put this in my own hands. But part of that was, my musical project that I invested a lot of time and money into, so I felt like I had to turn it into something. And now that I'm older, and it's been it's been about 2.5 years since I've done anything musically, I'm okay to recognize, I don't need to be Bob Seger, who made it at 35 years old into the big scene or whatever. I don't have to be quote unquote successful at this. I used to play music because I liked it, and then it became into something that, like, I've put so much of this time into, I've got to turn it into something that I can do as a living. And that's not really what I wanted necessarily. I just like playing music, and I like connecting with people. I like writing music, and I like playing with other musicians, and then I liked people's reactions when they heard what we created. So I'm kind of at peace with that now, and I feel like my calling is something different, but I still have the musician in me, and I do want to continue to make music. I can't wait to play with you guys. But overall,
I quit because of what you're talking about with, like, the music beats you down. Like, I started out in praise and worship playing in churches. It was just a very good way for me to be a musician because they wanted music. But then beyond playing praise and worship, I got into like punk and stuff. So the whole time I was playing rock music, whatever, it really wasn't in the field of scope that we were going to hit it big and get rich, up until like maybe a few little times we had a little carrot put in front of us to keep us on a treadmill, but it wasn't ever expected that it was going to be this giant career move. I quit because anytime that it did get to the point where it could be that way, it seemed like there was just this big giant field of sharks would show up and just start eating you alive, and there's nothing you could do about it. So I thought the only thing I could do was either quit altogether and go do something else, or just keep getting eaten over and over again. And I didn't realize at the time, because I was young and stupid, that all I had to do was quit dealing with those people in Nashville. You quit dealing with the industry.
Yeah.
And I was not intending to go, quote unquote, pro musician. I was not happy during COVID. And during the whole thing, I just really got back in music. There was a couple places that decided they wanted to start having live music, and I was one of the only ones that was prepared at the time when they opened back up for all the venues and stuff, because I'd been psychotically playing guitar and getting back into it after like a 5-year layoff of not doing anything. And so COVID really got me back into music, and sort of, I don't know, got me out of the basement. So
That's kind of what took me out of it. It's kind of crazy because Tim, you and I, we played on a Pee Wee basketball team in 1995 together, and we had not seen each other since then.
The basketball team.
What's that?
I said I'm not good with years, but I do remember playing on basketball teams.
Well, Tim and I played in a Pee Wee basketball team when I was probably 12 and he was 11 years old.
That's Pee Wee, all right, the whole thing.
Yeah. And,
I'd take a chance. They'd put me in center.
I remember that actually. You'd sub in for Twiggy.
Yeah.
Brandon Blevins. Tim and I hadn't seen each other since then, so it had been we'd seen each other at his work every now and then, but we'd never really talked. We hooked back up after, something like 25 or more years, and I actually started watching Tim doing his shows, his live shows that he was doing when COVID started. I had a whole bunch of live shows booked at bars and venues, and actually the last show that I had booked that got canceled was with Tim. We were going to play a brewery in downtown Johnson City for St. Patty's Day, and that was the first show to get canceled for COVID. And then I started watching Tim play on his live streams on Facebook, and Tim reached out to me about recording a song, which we did. He and Dustin and I recorded our theme song, The Men Behind the Curtain, for the Iron Mountain Hour. And it was just one of those songs I had laying around that I'd written years ago that I'd never done anything with. And so we started doing this, and that was I fell out of playing music about the time Tim fell back into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I fell into about the year the year the COVID hit was the year I got back into it, which is why I was even doing that JRH set to begin with.
Yeah.
That was a rough year. Like, I had not played in forever. My fingers just did not want to respond, but I made it through that year pretty good. But, yeah. So, I don't know. Music's a weird thing. I enjoy it quite a bit, but the industry really did turn me on it because of the way everything's handled. But, like, I'm getting over it now and just deciding to do everything in-house as much as I can to stay away from the vampires and the sharks.
Well, I had been playing, kind of as a hired gun, lead guitar player in a few different projects, and I just showed up and played the guitar. I didn't really write much music. But over the years, we'd be like, we need a new song or something. I'd say, like, oh, I got something. And they'd be like, we'd practice it, and the singer would be like, why don't you just sing it? It's your song. Why don't you just sing it, and then we can use it to fill time, and I can have a break for my voice. So I started doing that. And then people started coming to me like, dude, you're actually better than the singer. Why don't you sing? So I was like, that kind of encouraged me to go on my own about it. And then once I had made that leap, I kind of felt like I had to be somewhat successful for it. And I don't mean like actually being a Bob Seger, but I mean like making a living doing it, So I kind of felt like that was what I was called to do at the time. And, that was probably in my early 30s. And
Actually, I've been playing music right out of high school, but that was kind of the jarring experiences because it was weddings.
Yeah.
So I knew right out of high school that you could make good money playing weddings. It's just I kept seeing like a florist or a DJ or a wedding coordinator or somebody get very reamed by a bridezilla, and that scared me out of it because I didn't have a lot of I wasn't a very I didn't want to be put through that, and it was just a matter of time before somebody chewed me out for no reason. But it wasn't that I thought you couldn't make money playing music. It was I didn't think I could make money playing music doing something that wasn't just weddings or playing covers or something like that. But,
well, and that was the whole thing. The bands that I was playing with were primarily cover bands, and we made decent money. Before I started playing, if you do a full, a Roadhouse 3-hour, cover show, booked 2 nights in a row. A lot of times, even back in 2005-06, a Roadhouse with a packed house, and you keep their people dancing and buy drinks. they're going to pay you, $500 a night, and it's worth it to them because it's keeping their people dancing and buying drinks. But it's a totally different game when you start trying to push your own material out there versus playing material that the people have been dancing to for years. And, I honestly wasn't ready for that level of it. I thought, well, I've actually convinced myself. I never played in front of people much before, but I talked myself into not being afraid. I was always afraid of public speaking, and here I am doing a podcast after I was a singer in a band. I kind of do the G. Gordon Liddy method of overexposing myself to my fears to overcome them, and I guess I felt like I had to commit. So, but anyway, at any rate, I'm glad that I feel like I lived probably the first 10 years of my adult life, 12 years of my adult life in fear of failure and scared of taking risks and complacent. And even for all the ups and downs since then, I find life much more fulfilling to take those risks. And even if you fuck up, you got to find a way to make it. And that's what makes human beings resilient and strong. And that's what the society is conditioning out of human beings. Let's catch up on these chats here. Alvin's favorite team was the Kansas City Royals. Yeah, and they've never been a particularly popular or particularly successful major league team. Alvin says if your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Out, in, up, and down. That's right, Alvin. Man, my touchpad is acting way weird here. He says our system is predatory. Whether financial, medical, services, or whatever, our system is predatory. And that makes me think of the welfare state. Just to make a quick example, if you live in income project housing and you have no income, they'll let you have $25 a month rent. But as soon as you get a job, 30 days later, your rent is going to be $800-900 a month. They don't want you leaving. There's a whole system set up, a welfare industrial complex, if you will, that's set up to collect these tax monies and distribute them to the people who live in the apartments, who pay the rent to the people who set up these systems. So they have an incentive to keep you poor, to keep you on welfare, to keep you from bettering yourself. Let's see. Spill says for sure. I guess she's agreeing with Alvin there. She says her son works for a guy that drills horizontal wells and lay cable. He fixes their heavy equipment, and there's so many hoops to jump through. That's right. Horizontal drilling is special. That's right, Alvin. Alvin says anybody who works on their own and for themselves are a different cut from the rest of working people. Alvin also says it was a great leap for me to leave very good jobs and a very good career to go out on my own, and it changes you in ways people who don't do that can't or won't ever know. Yeah, Alvin, I think you're right. I've still got a lot to learn. I'm into it. I'm still only 2 months into it, but I did have a very good job before I left. I been making the most money I'd made in my life, and like I said, it wasn't fulfilling knowing I could be doing something for my benefit rather than my employer's. There's nothing against my employer. I had a good employer. But the fact that I most people who are doing that job, they're not paying attention to, what the product cost is, what the labor cost is, what the gas cost is, factoring in your insurance and your office rent and all this stuff like this, and pricing jobs accordingly, and, doing work accordingly. And I'm seeing all this information. I'm seeing all this. I'm seeing the back end of it. And I'm like, there's no reason I can't do this. I'm doing this. And hope I'm here still doing it, saying it's a good thing I did a year from now, but you never know. If I fail, I'll try something else, but it's worth the risk. Alvin says, Mark Twain said, a tax is fine for doing well, and a fine is a tax for doing wrong. A tax is a fine for doing well. Think about that. A tax is a fine for doing well, and a fine is a tax for doing wrong. Well, Mark Twain, he sure had it, didn't he? He sure got it.
So if you get a doctorate degree in the state of Tennessee, you have to pay $200. I don't know how many years. It may be every year or 2 years, but it's called a privilege tax because it's a privilege to hold a doctorate.
No shit.
Yeah, it's like that's crazy. You go to school for 8 years, and Tennessee gives you a $200 a year tax for being privileged enough to get a doctorate that you work for.
Yeah, that's it. Another in a long list of these. A long list of these credentialism or credentialist, and it's not, like I said, it's a mediocrity based society, because as long as you have the credential, it doesn't matter the quality of your work in a lot of cases. But in order to have that credential, you have to jump through all these hoops, even if your work is quality, or if it's not. You have to do it either way. It doesn't mean anything. Alvin says his grandpa told him when he was young, just do a good job and the money will come. Yeah, that's part of it. But, you know, I've learned, like I said, over the years, you have to go out there. A lot of times your employer, if you're working for somebody, if you're not showing them and reminding them how valuable to them that you are, they're not going to pay you more. They're going to keep paying you what you pay. So you got to show your value. And once you start showing your value, you'll start realizing your value. If you have to convince an employer, and you successfully convince an employer that you're worth paying more money for them to continue having your employment, then
Are you in sex?
Go ahead.
I said, are you in sex work? You start showing people your value.
I'd be good at it, but no. Let's see. Spill says, you said you weren't a leader, but Spill says you're the leader of the cigarette group. The cigarette cult, Spill. Get that right.
Yeah, but we're more of a
cult.
We're more of a group of friends, and I'll be a leader, but, you know, y'all can do whatever you want. loose leader.
Spill says agrees with Alvin that Grandpa's usually right. Grandpa's usually right. And Alvin says so too. And then there was Rich Mullins. I don't remember what we were referring to. They got you talking about Rich Mullins, but I went to a Christian camp in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and the guy who was in charge up there, he had basically been a mentor, or I don't know. Rich Mullins was basically in charge of the place when he was up there. And he said when he was a young man, Rich Mullins was walking around outside to see who all still had their lights on. And he started pitching a fit because somebody's light was still on. And the guy who was telling the story, he was brushing his teeth. And he said, "Hey, I'm just brushing my teeth. Hang on, I'll turn my light off in a minute." And Rich Mullins started pitching a fit, and then started walking and stepped in a hole and fell and broke his ankle because he was out walking around in the dark trying to get everybody for, keeping their lights on too late. I don't know what you're talking about with Rich Mullins there, but what's that, Tim?
Interesting character. So he was an interesting character. He had taken a vow of poverty, so a lot of that money he brought in was just to raise those camps and stuff. Unless there's something about him, I don't know. Speaking of being clumsy, though, that's what got him killed. Is he wrecked a Jeep and wasn't wearing his seatbelt.
Mm.
I mean, falling in ditches and breaking ankles and stuff. I guess maybe poor old Rich was just clumsy and careless. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's see here. Spill. Wait a minute. I got to scroll back up. Spill says, I've seen many bands hit but big and change their original sound into commercial or radio worthy or whatever, and ends up sucking. Nickelback's a good example of that. Nickelback, their album Silver Side Up was a really good album. I think it came out in 01, 02, 03, something like that. I bought that album, and it had that song about I've been wrong, I've been down to the bottom of every bottle, whatever.
Right.
But that was a good song, and that was a good album. And then after that, like you said, Spill, they just you know, in order to keep your deal, you've got to do so many sales, and in order to keep so many sales, you've got to, you know, make things for the lowest common denominator. In order to do that, you got to dumb the music down. So a lot of
Well, I
people
mean,
end up where they are.
like, I don't even know if you get a choice in that because, like, once upon a time, I got scouted out by like several members of what I call the machine. And you can use Avenged Sevenfold as a good example of just how drastically your sound can change. If you look at like the album Unholy Confessions, they get
Yeah, they
signed
went
by.
hardcore screamo to, you know, straight up. I don't know. I still liked City of Evil, but after that, it was garbage. I thought, but
But like City of Evil was what the result of what them getting signed to a major label was, because a lot of what happens is uh, a major producer will get a hold of a band that they think has talent, but what they want to do is they hear them doing something more controlled, and so they will give that record is actually a more of a product of the producer taking an existing thing and really tweaking it to make it sound
well,
like I've got an album sitting out there that'll never see the light of day that absolutely I don't even know, like just amazingly pop. But you know, so I mean,
well,
who knows? Bands if they meant to change like that or not, the producer could have a lot to do with it.
Sinister Gates from Avenged Sevenfold. His dad is like a I forget his name, but he's like an old time studio musician. He's a phenomenal guitar player. They actually trade guitar solos in the song Sidewinder. What's that?
So he should have been better than he was the whole time.
Yeah. Well, dude, his dad's awesome. If you listen to the song Sidewinder on the City of Evil album, they do a flamenco guitar solo trade-off that's pretty badass. But I really liked that album. I thought it was really good, but you're right. It was a change from Unholy Confessions. They were straight screamo, you know, almost no clean vocals, really, really just blast you in the fucking face. You know, emo metal music combo kind of deal. And, you know, then they went to a more, I don't know, pop punk vocal and kind of more of the pop punk sound on the guitars and stuff overall. What's that?
I wouldn't call it pop punk at all. I would call City of Evil just reinventing Iron Maiden.
Well, I just mean the vocal was kind of the pop punk style. But yeah, to me, it was, I actually had a, when that album came out, I had a comment published in Guitar World magazine. And they made it sound, dude, they made it sound like I was really sucking Avenged Sevenfold's dick. But I was just, I was mentioning that I appreciated their influence from, you know, there was an obvious Iron Maiden influence, Guns N' Roses, you know, there, a lot of good music kind of went into it, and I can't remember what all I said, but you know, I mentioned that I appreciated that they had taken the influences from those styles and made them into their own. And I still think it's a good album, even though I do recognize what you're talking about, how that was, you know, the transition to them from niche market to mass market, and then Critical Acclaim came out, and
yeah,
I was not a fan of that album whatsoever.
I'm not necessarily anti-bands changing and doing whatever they need to do. It's just entertainment. Sometimes it gets pretty cringy. But like, I mean, I do recognize that City of Evil is a jump in quality from, you know, the one before that. I don't know. I don't really judge musicians for the choices they make unless they do it sometimes. Like people want to judge Billy Joe Armstrong for going mainstream when Dookie came out, and it was like, oh my god, the punk band signed to a major label. But it's like, I think it was a less egregious sin than when they came out with American Idiot. I mean, punk band signing to a major label. Which one's worse egregious? Which one's worse? Punk band signing to a major label or punk band literally picking sides on a political platform? They're both pretty fucking cringe, so.
Honestly, the music aspect of American Idiot, it was beautiful musically, compositional. But it was very cringy. Yeah. Even though I agreed with Billy Joe on most of the things that he's talking about in that album, you know, this was in the wake of the Iraq War and the Bush presidency, and I had plenty in common with his sentiment.
He should be voting blue. If that wasn't implied the whole time, like, for anybody that's curious about it, I'm not upset because someone's taking sides with the political party. I'm upset about hypocrisy on things that I relate to. And when punk rockers start telling you who to vote for, it's like, well, you better be telling somebody who to vote for because you're punking them, because you're not supposed to be taking a side here anyway. You
Yeah.
can't exactly smash the fash while you're voting for one of your sides. And the idea, he's up there saying, don't want to be an American idiot, when in the meantime, what he meant was, you need to go vote for this guy over here. It's like, no, you're the idiot, dude. I don't know, like, it wasn't punk anymore at that point. It can sound like pop punk, but at that point, punk is semantic satiation. It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Well, punk has always been political, but punk was always about encouraging people to take their own path.
But it's supposed to be anti-authoritarian. It's not
exactly.
choose your side. It's supposed to be if this side does one thing, you tell them to fuck themselves. You don't say, hey, you guys go for these people instead.
Fuck yeah.
You know, it's just completely anti-punk when you pick a side to begin with.
I agree.
That's
Alvin
all it
says, Spill says, stay underground, stay passionate, stay independent. And Alvin says, you're right, Spill. The industry is the artist's worst enemy. Ain't that the truth? I did have a record deal with Corned Beef and the... I did have a record deal with Corned Beef and the Pillbillies in 2015. But they wanted us to replace our drummer, Aaron Armageddon. Aaron was not a traditional drummer. He was somebody who was like, you guys need a drummer? Okay, I'll learn to play the drums. And he started playing drums. And it worked for us. But the record industry, when we went to record this, they're like, oh, well, he doesn't play this fill at this, this certain way. He needs to do this way. He needs to do this way. And then eventually they were like, look, we could market this record, but we're going to need you to replace your drummer. And I'm like, no, dude, why the fuck would I replace my drummer?
I wouldn't have even been associated with a label that wanted to be in charge of the recording process to begin with.
Yeah, and well, they came off eventually. I won't say who it was, but because you never know, these people are litigious. But
I've got about 2 more years, and I'm going to tell you some absolute fucking horror stories about some people that have like Grammys and shit, and I'm going to rip them a new ass because they shouldn't have done what they've done.
I can't wait to hear.
I'm just waiting for the statute of limitations to run out on it.
Well,
I probably shouldn't have said.
That's all right. I can't wait to hear that. I am going to have a private conversation with you.
That's all it is. The people in that I've been on the outskirts of the music industry for a long time, being that little shy kid that wants to make weird music. And every now and then somebody with a little bit of money comes by and says, hey, buddy, you sing pretty. You want to come over here and do some recording? And then they do something awful, and I just get offended, and I go back to my little hidey hole. That's happened about 2 or 3 times. And it just so happens to always happen to people that had such a name I didn't think they were capable of just being a road pirate, essentially. But no, apparently that never goes away. Apparently you can be like Elvis Presley's producer or something, and you're still capable of ripping off little tiny musicians just because you need some funding. But anyway, that's a story I'll tell you off camera because I haven't really
wait to hear
it. Yeah, because it actually does connect to some people that people are going to know the names of.
Right.
And you can't go to war with people online until, because I'm not
all your ducks in a row if you're going to pick that fight.
Yeah, well, it's not going to go anywhere. I'm tired of not telling the story for the sake of not going.
But you can't just up and rip it on a podcast without, being careful what you're doing.
Trust me, I've got some insight on getting boned by the industry. I'm very experienced at that.
Okay.
As a lot of musicians are.
Let's see here. Spill says, Alvin says, you're right, Spill. The industry is the artist's worst industry. And Spill says, that's crazy, guys. Funny how things happen. You're better off being a DJ at a wedding, I would think. Yeah, dude, there's plenty of money for wedding DJs. There really is. I mean, you make hundreds of dollars an hour for a minimal investment, a few $1,000s to get a decent DJ set up for weddings. And
money too. The issue with being a cover band can make a lot of good money too. The issue with being an original artist is for anybody that doesn't know about musicians that probably I'm going to go. This is a rough estimate. I'm going to say 60 to 75% of the actual music industry is just a sea of people who have created businesses that are going to take aspiring artists to the next level. And if artists would just skip every single person that's offering to help them and just keep doing everything themselves, they would be just fine. But most artists spend almost all their time getting sucked into these production deals and marketing people and people that are going to do artist development things. And it's all just time wasting bullshit. Somebody that says, "Hey, I can help you do this if you'll give me $100," when you could just save your $100 and figure out how to do it yourself, because they're not going to help you.
Yeah.
That's most of the industry is just people ripping off naive people who think that.
Yeah, people recognize somebody with a talent that they can capitalize on.
So yeah, that's the majority of the industry is figuring out to skip all that stuff and just do your own thing. You're never going to be Michael Jackson. Just be okay with being you. That's the secret.
And it is easier than ever, just like with what we're doing now. Just think about the fact that Tim and I can have a conversation from our homes in studios that we set up. I mean, our whole setup here is a few $1,000s. You think about running in, the 1950s and 60s, running a television studio. Their equipment was nowhere near what we have right here. Only,
you don't think so?
Huh?
Those big nice cameras and stuff wouldn't be better?
I don't mean that. I just mean as far as being accessible to your average people. The cameras might have been, but your television was like a 360 by 360. The microphone and camera quality that we have today, and the television screen and the speaker quality we have today is unheard of compared to the 1950s and 60s in particular, where you had to have those gatekeepers, you had to have a record label, you had to have a television production studio in order for you to do that. But you know what? You could make a movie right now. You could go out with your friends on an iPhone or a Galaxy and film a feature-length film with production standards up to the quality of like a 1970s, 80s film. And you can do that on your own. You can create a podcast on your own. You can create an album on your own. You can go out and do everything that everybody tried to gatekeep you from, that you can do news. Walter Cronkite ain't the only game in town anymore, baby. You can get out there and you can do your thing, and you can use these tools that the elite intended to use against us. We can take advantage of them and use them for ourselves. And if we don't, it's going to be too late if we don't do it soon. Let's see here. Spill says it's hard to dance to something new. But a lot of times when you dance to something new, that's when you get the biggest smile on your face, because you feel like a fool, and then you laugh at yourself, and then next thing you know, you are digging in and having a good time and smiling and laughing. Alvin said he danced once. Spill says she's not much on dancing. I watch dancing, but I don't really do it. Yeah, I'm the same thing.
I dance every day.
I nod my head and tap my foot. That's about it. What did you say, Tim? I was talking. I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
So I dance every day, and I do it poorly. I think dancing is the same as singing. You don't have to be good at it to do it.
Yeah. I'm a head nodder and a foot tapper. I do that unconsciously, but I am too self-conscious to actually dance, So, maybe that'd be my New Year's resolution next year. I'm going to dance like no one's watching. Let's see. Spill's laughing at Alvin's once, and then commends my good attitude. I appreciate that. I hope I have a good attitude. I try to. Alvin says, yeah, I was into the ballroom thing a couple of years. It was fun, but a wild world. I bet there's a lot of swingers in that ballroom dancing world. Spill, they can think of more taxes and crap. I am over it. Me too. Alvin says, Cliff, that comment about showing your worth brought the whole night together. Well, I'm glad. Alvin says, I drove by his accident with him laying under the stretcher under his sheet. I lived in Wichita and was friends with the pastor of the church. He found it there. Spill says she can't wait, Jim, and tells you sing pretty. And definitely go out and check Tim's album there. Spill also says her youngest son got the iPhone 14, excellent camera quality, and he makes drifting videos with his friends. He's good at editing, so they're good quality. His BMW 40.
Yeah,
Spill
we're
says
getting
that crap
for
what he calls it, E40, I think. Yeah, and you take into account drones and the modern cell phones. You can rival productions from Hollywood, even 20 years ago, really. And with the advent of AI, it's a whole new world for creative people out there. And you don't have to have Paramount behind you. You can make this shit in your home with your computer, and you can put it out there. And may not have the resources of Paramount to promote it internationally, but you put it out there and you make a quality product eventually. Some people are going to see it and appreciate it, even if it's not a whole little. Just like Jordan, what I was talking about earlier with his song, what made that song? Jordan, I've not played music in 2.5 years, but Jordan somehow came across my CD and enjoyed it enough to call me and ask me if I'd come to his podcast. So, quality stuff that you put your heart into endures, and other people appreciate it. And even if I'm never known for anything that I did with my voice or with my music or with my talking here on the Iron Mountain Hour, at least I fucking tried. At least I fucking tried. At least I didn't lay back and say, well, it is what it is. Things are never going to get any better. I might as well just be happy with what I got. It's good enough. At least I fucking tried. And at least you're trying, Tim.
I want to go down not trying. I want to go down bitter and leave a very poor example for anyone behind me.
Hell yeah.
I want people to look at me and go, let's be like that guy. He gave up before starting.
You're not going to be very David Koresh-like with your cigarette cult with that attitude, Tim.
No. So that's the difference between my cult and other cults. I'm not encouraging people to have false delusions. I think everybody is going to fail, and that's why they're going to be in my cult to begin with. You're not going to be in my cult looking for free cigarettes if you're killing it at life. You're there because some shit. You know what I'm saying? I
don't
want
take
people
that personally. I know you just want the cigarettes.
Yeah, I get you. Y'all want some free cigarettes?
No. Anna actually, I'm sure is picking up what you're putting down. The cigarettes are just a bonus. Just kidding, Anna.
Well, we're shaking the cigarette butts just like I'm shaking them
out there. Shake the cigarette tree.
There will be a cigarette tree. I have lots of holidays planned.
Spill says, "Don't be mad, Tim. I talk myself out of things all the time." And Alvin says, "Tim, the master of sardonic witticism." Yes, he absolutely is. I love Tim's sardonic attitude. It makes for a good show.
Sardonic.
We've gone a little long tonight, Ben. Since I put in the description, I do want to talk about real quick before we go. Dude, we've been on like 2.5 hours. But just in case anybody's still listening, I know Alvin and Spill are still out there, so maybe they'll enjoy it. We had the the indictment of former president, or I'm not even going to say former president, just because that's what the corporate media, they're like fawning. Oh, they love to say former President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump, in an unprecedented event, was indicted by I think it was the Southern District of New York or Manhattan. I can't remember. One of these city attorneys up there, or state attorneys, indicted Donald Trump for related to basically filing errors is what it comes down to. Because even if Donald Trump, let's just take a steel man argument, say 100%, Donald Trump paid $130,000, and I'm not saying this is true. Let's just take this at face value. Donald Trump paid $130,000 to a porn star to not tell people that they had slept together. Well, okay. If Donald Trump had done this in a certain way, they would not indict him. But because of the way that in which this was done, and ultimately it comes down to this woman who was writing a book. Stormy Daniels comes up to Trump's attorney and says, "Hey, if you don't pay me $130,000, I'm going to tell, or probably $100,000, I'm going to tell the world and my book that I slept with Trump." And she later even acknowledged that she did not sleep with Trump.
Shit.
What's that?
That's all this. Like I've been on the edge. Like I've not been looking at the details of stuff when it pops up, and I saw it was like, oh, Trump's going to be indicted, but it's like, holy shit! I figured it would be something a little bit more substantial than the fucking Stormy Daniels again. That shit's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. If it were the feds declined to prosecute it, and the feds wanted to prosecute it, but ultimately what it boils down to is Trump had a lawyer on retainer, Michael Cohen. He paid him a certain amount of money each month. And we're talking dozens of thousands of dollars each month to keep a high-priced New York lawyer on retainer to where he will show up in court whenever you need him. And that's the kind of lawyer that Trump needs, so he pays for this service. So anyway, this lady comes to Michael Cohen and says, "Hey, I'm going to tell the world that I slept with Donald Trump." And this is like 2015 when this happens, when he's running for president. And Michael Cohen says, "Hold on, Stormy. What's it going to take to keep you quiet?" And they ultimately agree to $130,000. Stormy's not going to say anything. Michael Cohen documented, and he paid this out of his own pocket, never told Trump about it, did not ask for reimbursement. He just continued to collect his retainer fee of however many dozens of thousands of dollars per month over over the course of his employment with Trump. So basically, this is Cohen keeping his boss separated from something that could harm him. And at one point, like I said, I think it was like 2016, 2017, Stormy Daniels said that she never even actually had sex with Trump. I don't know if she did or not. That's neither here nor there.
See what a wag the dog situation this seems like, where it's like, he's not even the president anymore, and they're still going after him for things that, for prostitutes. That's what we're doing now.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's a campaign finance violation, what they're charging him with. They're saying that he improperly used his campaign funds to cover the cost of this, which to me is blatantly not true, because he was already paying this guy to be his lawyer. He'd been his lawyer for years. This guy did not charge Trump any more money to...
That's glue, man.
What's that?
It's just glue. Like, news are like it's the way I have to label them, because I'm crazy in my own head. Like, to keep from having to discuss it with myself about what certain stuff is. Articles, like stories where it's like literally just a waste of time, is what I call glue.
Oh, okay.
But, like, we're just chewing a bunch of information for literally no reason, because in the end, it's either going to go somewhere or it won't. But when they were saying Trump's going to be indicted, I thought it would have to do with literally anything other than just another Stormy Daniels. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
And so Democrats are going to be losing their minds over literally just nothing for how long? Because, I mean, your Republicans will talk about this for a few days or something like that. But, Democrats are still obsessed with Trump, and that blows my mind that they won't. It's like, that's mental illness that you guys won't let. He's not president anymore. Let it go.
Yeah.
You can insult other people. It's weird for me.
Well, I think nobody was a disruptor to, like I've said on this show, although I do think Trump was the best president since I've been alive, it's not like he's great. It's like he doesn't have a very high bar. I probably agree with Trump 50 to 60% of the time, but that's better than the 10 to 20% of the time that I normally agree with presidents and normally approve of their action.
100% of the time. I could disagree with him 100% of the time. It just was such an obvious setup. Yeah. That they primed the left to hate this guy. Mm-hmm. And then, and I feel like they did it in a really clownish way too. Kind of like how they used to clown the right back in the 80s and 90s by setting them up with stuff. I feel like that's what they did with this. Like, they gave you a guy that's just hateable enough for people to be like, yeah, I can see why you hate him. But they filled him full of so much vitriol that it really does come across as just over the top at this point. Because it's like, guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but he's not personally online right now handing money to Putin himself or something like that. But that's how they act. It's really insane to watch.
Well, and the main reason I bring it up is because it's unprecedented in American society that a political group will prosecute their political opponent to, and it's almost undeniably to lessen his chances of winning.
That's what it is.
Do what?
I think they're setting it up because I'm crazy. I think they indict Trump for something really stupid like this. And now you've set a new precedent that you're allowed to indict presidents, and Biden has a lot of shit they can indict him for.
It's the great ricochet, and it empowers the right when they take over the government in 2024 to be an authoritarian body. I did make a little meme here. Tell me what you think of this. Give that a moment to come up on your screen there, Tim, if you're watching the show with a monitor.
With a phone. I mean, I see the Thug Life meme.
Yeah. So that's what that does for Trump. That makes him a martyr.
Better.
What's that?
Sorry. For a lot of people, that makes him look better.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying is they've turned him into a martyr for the people, and it's only going to further divide. And if we end up in a position where the political right takes power, we're seeing a lot of stuff with in the aftermath of that shooting, people ready to outlaw like trans people from society and things like this.
If Trump could break dance, I'd vote for him.
Well, the whole idea with the ricochet is the right wing is going to take control of the government. And while we were all worried about the left wing being authoritarian, which they certainly want to be, but I think there's less danger of it from we're going to see the right wing come back into power and turn into authoritarian to go after the left wing and their stuff, and then they're going to create new systems that are going to be used to go after the right wing in the future, giving the government ever more and more power. And I think that's what Ricochet is all about, and I think it comes to a head, and I think it's highly destructive. Then I think that arresting the former president in order to keep that agenda going is just a ratcheting up, and it's very dangerous. But it's late, so let's get off of here, everybody. Thank you so much for tonight. I've drank 2 20-ounce beers while I'm sitting here, so I'm going to have to go. But I really appreciate y'all joining us. It's been almost 3 hours. Is our longest show ever, I think. So I will see you on Sunday. Thanks, everybody. All right.